Welcome back. Venezuelan dictator Nicolas Maduro and his wife currently being held at a federal detention center in Brooklyn, New York. They are waiting an appearance in court this week. It could come as soon as tomorrow. Fox News correspondent CB Cotton is outside the Metropolitan Detention Center. Hi, CB.
Hi, Jillian. Well, Nicolas Maduro went from dictator to detainee, and he's now behind bars where some of the most notorious criminals have once been held, like Sean Diddy Combs and Ghislaine Maxwell.
The Justice Department's superseding four-count indictment charging Nicolas Maduro, his wife Celia Flores, his son, and other senior Venezuelan government officials with narco-terrorism conspiracy, cocaine importation conspiracy, and weapons charges. The case builds upon the one brought against Maduro in 2020 and alleges Venezuelan leaders, including Maduro, spent more than 25 years abusing government power and working with drug traffickers and violent narco-terrorists to flood the U.S. with, quote, thousands of tons of cocaine. With Maduro and his wife now on U.S. soil, Attorney General Pam Bondi has said, quote, they will soon face the full wrath of American justice on American soil and American courts. In the 25-page indictment, prosecutors revealing how Maduro used the drug smuggling scheme to line his family's pockets. One example, prosecutors say Maduro sold diplomatic passports to known traffickers to, quote, assist traffickers seeking to move drug proceeds from Mexico to Venezuela under diplomatic cover. The indictment also saying Maduro facilitated the movement of private planes to help bring drug proceeds back from Mexico into Venezuela. Prosecutors say Maduro and his wife protected it all with state-sponsored gangs and by ordering kidnappings, beatings, and murders against those who crossed them.
In 2020, Maduro denied all the charges brought against him by the U.S. government. It's not clear who will serve on his legal defense team with this case. We expect him to be arraigned in federal court tomorrow. Jillian.
CB Cotton in Brooklyn, New York, outside that federal facility where Maduro is being held right now. Thank you. Joining me now is former Attorney General Bill Barr, whose Justice Department indicted Maduro back in 2020. Sir, thank you for being with us.
Sure.
Maduro has been indicted now in the Southern District of New York on 4 charges. Do you think he is going to be convicted? And what kind of sentence is he looking at here, if convicted?
Yeah, I have a high degree of confidence he'll ultimately be convicted, and all the legal arguments that have been raised really were raised during the prosecution of Noriega, which was a very parallel situation.
Which you also oversaw.
Right. And I think they will be rejected, and I think he will be convicted, and I think he's looking at sentences similar to, if not bigger than, Noriega's sentence. He's committed far more crimes in my mind than Noriega did, and Noriega got a 40-year sentence, which was reduced to 30, but then he also served time in France and then later in Panama, where he died.
And it sounds like, based on my conversation with the Homeland Security Secretary, he could face time behind bars here in the United States as well as possibly abroad as well.
Right. Well, if one of the European leaders is willing to crawl out of their hole and actually indict him, because he was one of the biggest source of illegal drugs going into Europe, and if they indict him, then, as in Noriega's case, we might be willing to give him over once he's convicted here, right, to serve additional time in prison in a foreign country.
The news of Maduro's capture when it broke yesterday was shocking to a lot of people in Washington, but not necessarily surprising in the sense that the administration had been laying this legal groundwork for some time, not only with the indictment a few years ago, but during this administration over the past year, they upped the bounty on him through the Rewards for Justice program. I think they were offering $50 million for information that would lead to his capture.
Yes.
They also designated Tren de Aragua as a domestic and foreign terrorist organization. Do these tools factor into the charges he is now facing?
Well, I mean, it shows the unity of purpose and that they had the intention of pursuing him and bringing him to justice. But people get wrapped around the axle about over this dichotomy. Was this law enforcement or was this national defense? And I think what people have to understand is when a group of foreigners, and Panama illustrates this well, when a group of foreigners are engaged in an activity that's directed against the United States, that can both be, at the same time, illegal activity that subjects them to our legal process, but also it can be a national security threat that subjects them to the use of our defense power. And this is that kind of situation. And that's why the president, I think, could use defense powers in interdicting the boats and can turn to his law enforcement powers, because it's really our choice of what's best for the American people. And he's decided to bring him to justice and use law enforcement powers. And, I think that's admirable, and it shows a great deal of restraint.
Does it matter whether the United States is technically at war or not with Venezuela? The Trump administration has been saying we are at war with the drug cartels. Democrats on Capitol Hill push back and say there's no authorization for a war here. How does that
Well, I think
factor in?
technically he may have referred to it as war, but what he said, I think, or what the administration's position was, it was an armed conflict. And so we were using our defense powers, and I think there's no question that the United States can use its defense powers against foreign groups or entities that pose a national security threat. But in terms of the arrest of and the prosecution of Noriega, that's a law enforcement exercise, and it's going to be upheld as such. We've been through this before. Now, there's discussion of, well, how does that justify coming in and, quote, playing a role in the future of the country? When you have a situation, as you did in Panama and here, where the de facto government, which we don't recognize, but they're the ones engaged in the criminal activity, going after them and dismantling them inherently involves regime change. And the object here is not just to get Maduro. We indicted a whole slew of his lieutenants. It's to clean that place out of this criminal organization. And so there's going to have to be follow-up action, and that's going to require the United States to play a role.
To that point, sir, take a listen to Secretary Rubio. This was back in September. I had the opportunity to sit down with him in Jerusalem. He already started making this argument. Take a listen.
Not only do we not recognize him, 50-something countries around the world do not recognize Nicolas Maduro as the rightful president. He's not the president of Venezuela.
So why are cabinet officials and the president so loath to use the term regime change when that was so clearly what it is?
It's unfortunately it's gotten a bad reputation because of its use in progressive circles. But let's go back to the Barbary pilots under the Jefferson administration. The original plan there was to change the Pasha and substitute a relative who was pro-American. It was regime change was the original plan. And Congress was not approving it, okay? And throughout our history, it's become necessary sometimes in carrying out law enforcement or suppressing banditry or some other thing like that to change a regime. And it's not a declaration of war. It may involve armed conflict.
Well, Mr. Attorney General, you've given us a lot to think about. We have to leave it there. Thank you for taking time with us today.
Great
Happy
to join
New Year
you. Thank you.
Maybe
Same
next
to
time
you.
you could throw it back farther with the historical references.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.